My name is Jason Miller, and I'm 36 years old. 8 months ago, I stood in a courtroom watching my former business partner and college friend, Tyler Hayes, try to explain to a judge why he had secretly changed our company's registration to make himself the sole owner of the construction business we had built together over 7 years. His attorney was presenting arguments about why Tyler deserved full ownership, claiming I had been mismanaging funds and making poor business decisions. What Tyler didn't know was that I had spent the past 5 months working with a forensic accountant and a business attorney to document every unauthorized transaction he had made, every fake invoice he had created, and every piece of evidence proving that he had systematically stolen the company I had built. The look on his face when the judge reviewed the evidence and ordered full ownership restored to me, plus damages totaling $375,000, was the moment I knew that justice had been served. If you're watching this story unfold, drop a comment about where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button, because what happened next proved that sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who will betray you when money is involved. But to understand how I got to that courtroom, fighting to reclaim a company that was rightfully mine, I need to take you back 12 years and show you how a friendship I thought was genuine turned out to be a carefully calculated plan to steal everything I worked for. I met Tyler Hayes during our junior year at Portland State University. We were both studying business administration, and we became friends through a group project in an entrepreneurship class. Tyler was charismatic, outgoing, and had big dreams about starting his own business someday. I was more analytical and detail-oriented, focused on understanding the operational and financial aspects of running a company. We complemented each other well, or at least I thought we did. Tyler would come up with ambitious ideas, and I would figure out how to make them practical and achievable. We spent hours in the library and coffee shops talking about business concepts, analyzing case studies, and dreaming about what we might build together someday. After graduation, Tyler and I stayed in touch while working different jobs. I went to work for a large commercial construction company as a project coordinator, learning the business from the ground up. Tyler worked in sales for a building materials supplier where he developed relationships with contractors and learned about the construction industry from the sales side. About 5 years after graduation, Tyler called me with a proposal. He had been thinking about starting a construction company, focusing on residential remodeling and commercial renovation projects. He had connections from his sales job and believed he could bring in clients. What he needed was someone who could manage the actual projects, handle finances, and make sure the work was done properly. I think we'd make a great team, Tyler said during that initial conversation. I'm good at sales and networking. You're good at operations and project management. We could build something real together. The idea excited me. I had been learning the construction business for 5 years and felt ready to apply that knowledge to my own company. And having a business partner who could focus on sales while I managed operations seemed like a smart division of responsibilities. We spent several months planning the business. We developed a business plan, secured a small business loan for $80,000, and registered the company as Miller Hayes Construction, LLC. The name reflected our equal partnership, and the ownership structure was set up as 50-50, with both of us listed as co-owners and managing members. The business started slowly. Our first projects were small residential jobs, bathroom remodels and kitchen updates that brought in maybe $15,000 to $20,000 each. But the work was good quality, clients were happy, and we started building a reputation for reliable professional service. From the beginning, our roles were clearly divided. I managed everything operational, hiring subcontractors, scheduling work, managing budgets, handling client communications during projects, and making sure everything was completed properly and on time. Tyler focused on sales and networking, attending industry events, developing relationships with property managers and real estate agents, and bringing in new clients. This division of labor made sense initially, but I started to notice that I was working significantly more hours than Tyler. I was on job sites every day, managing crews, dealing with problems, meeting with clients, and handling all the administrative work. Tyler would attend networking events a few times a week and follow up with potential clients, but his total work hours were probably 30% of mine. When I mentioned this disparity, Tyler would remind me that his networking was what brought in the business. "You're doing great work on the projects," he would say, But without me bringing in clients, there wouldn't be any projects to manage. We both have our roles. I accepted this explanation because I wanted to believe that our partnership was fair and balanced. And Tyler did bring in clients. His networking was effective, and our project pipeline gradually grew. Over the first 3 years, Miller Hayes Construction grew steadily. We went from doing small residential jobs to larger commercial renovation projects. Our annual revenue grew from $200,000 in the first year to $800,000 by the third year. We hired our first full-time employee, a project manager named Alex Rodriguez, to help me manage the growing workload. But I was still working significantly more than Tyler. I was in the office by 6 in the morning and often worked until 7 or 8 at night. Tyler would show up around 9, attend meetings or networking events, and usually leave by 5. The imbalance in our work hours and contributions bothered me, but Tyler always had an explanation. "I'm out there building relationships that will bring in future business," he would say when I raised concerns. "That work isn't as visible as being on job sites, but it's just as important for the company's growth." I wanted to believe him, and the company was growing, so I told myself that our partnership was working, even if it didn't feel completely balanced. As the business continued to grow, I started noticing other concerning patterns. Tyler would make financial decisions without consulting me, spending company money on expensive dinners and entertainment that he claimed were business development expenses. He would commit to projects at prices I thought were too low, then leave me to figure out how to complete them profitably. When I would try to discuss these decisions, Tyler would become defensive. "You handle operations, I handle sales and business development," he would say. "That means I make decisions about client relationships and business development spending. You need to trust that I know what I'm doing." But I didn't trust his judgment on these matters. The expensive dinners and entertainment often seemed more like Tyler enjoying a lifestyle at the company's expense than legitimate business development. And the underpriced projects he committed to meant I had to work harder and manage tighter budgets to maintain our profit margins. The situation reached a turning point about 4 years into the business. We landed our biggest contract yet, a $250,000 commercial renovation for a tech company expanding their office space. It was the kind of project that could establish us as a serious player in the commercial renovation market. I managed every aspect of that project meticulously, coordinating multiple subcontractors, staying on schedule despite various challenges, and ensuring the quality met the client's high standards. Tyler's contribution was bringing in the client initially and attending a few status meetings. The project was completed successfully, on time and on budget. The client was thrilled and gave us a glowing testimonial. It was exactly the kind of success that would lead to more large commercial projects. About a month after completing the project, I discovered that Tyler had taken a $15,000 bonus from the company, claiming it was for his role in securing such a large contract. He hadn't discussed this with me, hadn't offered me a similar bonus despite the fact that I had managed the entire project, and had simply transferred the money to his personal account. When I confronted him, Tyler was dismissive. "I brought in a $250,000 contract," he said. "That deserves recognition and compensation. You got your regular salary for managing the project. I got a bonus for bringing in the business. That seems fair to me." "We're equal partners," I protested. "Major financial decisions like bonuses should be discussed and agreed upon by both of us. And if anyone deserves a bonus for that project, it's me. I'm the one who actually did the work to make it successful." "You're being petty," Tyler replied. "This is how business works. The person who brings in revenue gets compensated for it. If you want bonuses, start bringing in clients instead of just managing the work I get for us." The argument ended badly, with Tyler refusing to return the bonus or acknowledge that he should have consulted me before taking it. That incident damaged my trust in Tyler, but I still wasn't ready to end the partnership. We had built something successful, and I didn't want to throw that away over one conflict. But Tyler's self-dealing and his dismissal of my contributions continued. Over the next year, he took several more undisclosed bonuses, made expensive purchases he claimed were business assets, but that benefited him personally, and generally acted like he was entitled to use the company as his personal bank account. Meanwhile, I continued managing all the actual work of the business. I was overseeing projects worth over $1 million annually, managing a growing team of employees and subcontractors, maintaining client relationships, and handling all the administrative and operational functions that kept the company running. By the sixth year of the business, Miller Hayes Construction was thriving. We had annual revenue of approximately $2.3 million, a strong reputation in the Portland market, and a pipeline of projects that suggested continued growth. From the outside, we looked like a successful partnership. But internally, the relationship between Tyler and me had deteriorated significantly. I resented his minimal work contributions, his self-dealing with company finances, and his attitude that bringing in clients entitled him to greater compensation and decision-making power despite our equal ownership structure. Tyler, meanwhile, seemed to resent that I questioned his decisions and his financial practices. He started making comments about how I was just the project manager, while he was the face of the company who made the business possible. About 18 months ago, Tyler started pushing for changes to how the company was structured. He suggested that we formalize the division of responsibilities, with him handling all strategic and business development decisions, and me handling operational and project management decisions. We're stepping on each other's toes too much, Tyler argued. We need clearer boundaries about who makes which decisions. I'll handle anything related to sales, marketing, and business strategy. You handle project execution and day-to-day operations. That way we're not constantly arguing about decisions. I was skeptical of this proposal because it seemed designed to give Tyler more control over finances and strategic direction while limiting my input. But I also thought that clearly defined roles might reduce the conflict between us. We worked with our business attorney to draft an operating agreement that formalized these responsibilities. I should have been more careful about the language in that agreement, should have had my own attorney review it separately. But I trusted our existing attorney, and I trusted that Tyler wouldn't use the agreement against me. That was a mistake. About 15 months ago, I started noticing that Tyler was having private conversations with our attorney and our accountant, meetings that I wasn't included in or informed about. When I asked about these meetings, Tyler would say they were about strategic planning or business development opportunities that fell under his area of responsibility per the operating agreement. I felt increasingly excluded from major business decisions, but the operating agreement we had signed seemed to support Tyler's position that he had authority over strategic and financial matters. Then, about a year ago, something happened that made me realize Tyler was actively working against me. I had been developing a proposal for a large commercial renovation project, a $400,000 contract that would be the biggest project in our company's history. I had spent weeks on the proposal, coordinating with subcontractors to get accurate pricing, developing a detailed project plan, and preparing a comprehensive presentation for the client. The day before the presentation, Tyler told me he had decided to handle the presentation himself. "This is a major strategic opportunity," he said. "I need to be the one presenting to ensure we land this contract." I was frustrated but agreed, thinking that Tyler's sales skills might actually help win the contract. I gave him all my preparation materials and briefed him on every aspect of the proposal. Tyler presented the proposal, and we won the contract. But when the client called to confirm details and thank us for the winning proposal, they mentioned how impressed they had been with Tyler's comprehensive understanding of the project scope and his detailed planning. I realized that Tyler had presented the entire proposal as if he had developed it himself, never mentioning that I had done all the actual work of creating it. He had taken credit for my work to enhance his own reputation with the client. When I confronted him, Tyler was unapologetic. "I presented the proposal so the client associates it with me," he said. "That's just how client relationships work. You need to stop being so sensitive about credit and focus on doing the work." That was the moment I started to realize that Tyler didn't see me as an equal partner. He saw me as an employee, someone whose work he could take credit for and whose contributions he could minimize. But I still didn't understand the full extent of what Tyler was planning until about 10 months ago when something happened that changed everything. I went to access our business bank account to review some transactions and discovered that my login credentials no longer worked. When I called the bank, they informed me that I had been removed as an authorized user on the account. I immediately called Tyler. Why was I removed from our business bank account? We need better financial controls. Tyler replied calmly. As the person responsible for strategic and financial decisions per our operating agreement, I've consolidated account access. You'll submit expense requests to me and I'll handle all financial transactions. It's more efficient this way. That's not how our partnership works, I argued. We're equal owners. I need access to our accounts. Actually, there's been a change you should be aware of, Tyler said, his tone shifting to something colder. I've restructured the company's ownership to reflect the reality of who actually runs the business. I'm now the sole owner of Miller Hayes Construction. You're welcome to continue as an employee if you want, but you're no longer a partner. I felt like the ground had dropped out from under me. What are you talking about? We're 50-50 partners. You can't just change that? Actually, I can, Tyler replied. The operating agreement gave me authority over strategic business decisions. Restructuring ownership falls under that authority. I filed the paperwork with the state, and it's done. You're no longer an owner. That's not what the operating agreement says, I protested. It doesn't give you authority to change ownership structure. That requires mutual consent. My attorney disagrees, Tyler said. And since I'm the one who's been building relationships, bringing in clients, and making the strategic decisions that have made this company successful, it makes sense that I should be the owner. You're good at project management, Jason, but you're not a business leader. This change reflects reality. I was stunned, furious, and felt utterly betrayed. Tyler, my college friend, the person I had built a business with for 7 years, had stolen the company from me. I'll fight this, I said. This is fraud. You can't just steal my ownership. Good luck with that, Tyler replied. I have an attorney, I have documentation, and I have control of the company. If you want to try to sue me, go ahead. But you'll spend more money on attorneys than you'll ever recover. My advice is to accept the situation and continue working as an employee, or walk away and find something else to do. The call ended, and I sat in shock, trying to process what had just happened. Everything I had built over 7 years, all the long hours, all the hard work, all the sacrifice, had been stolen by someone I had trusted completely. But after the initial shock wore off, I felt something else. Cold determination. Tyler had betrayed me, stolen my business, and assumed I would just accept it, or walk away. He had underestimated me completely. I wasn't going to accept this. I was going to fight back, and I was going to do it strategically and methodically, building a case so strong that Tyler wouldn't be able to lie or manipulate his way out of what he had done. The first thing I did was call a business litigation attorney named Rachel Nguyen, who specialized in partnership disputes and business fraud. I explained the situation. 7 years of equal partnership, Tyler's recent claim that he had restructured ownership based on authority granted in our operating agreement, and my belief that this was fraudulent and violated our partnership agreement. Rachel listened carefully and then asked to review all our business documents, the original LLC formation documents, the operating agreement, any amendments or changes to ownership, and communications between Tyler and me about the ownership change. Jason, this sounds like a clear case of partnership fraud, Rachel said after reviewing the initial documents. The operating agreement you signed gives Tyler authority over certain business decisions, but it absolutely does not give him authority to unilaterally change the ownership structure of the company. That would require mutual consent from both partners. If Tyler filed paperwork with the state claiming sole ownership without your consent, that's fraudulent and we can challenge it. How long will this take? I asked. Partnership disputes can take months or even years depending on how much Tyler fights it, Rachel replied. But the key is building a comprehensive case that shows not just the fraudulent ownership change, but also a pattern of self-dealing, misappropriation of funds, and breach of fiduciary duty. If we can show the judge that Tyler has been systematically stealing from the partnership, it strengthens our case and potentially gets you damages beyond just restoring your ownership. What do I need to do? Document everything, Rachel instructed. Get copies of all financial records, emails, text messages, Any communications where Tyler made unauthorized financial decisions or took credit for your work. Bank statements showing his unauthorized bonuses and expenses. Project records showing your actual contributions to the business. Anything that proves you were the one actually running the company while Tyler was taking credit and stealing money. Over the next few weeks, I worked obsessively to gather evidence. I copied every financial record I could access before Tyler might think to delete or hide them. I saved emails and text messages documenting Tyler's unauthorized decisions and his pattern of taking credit for my work. I created detailed timelines showing my contributions to each major project compared to Tyler's minimal involvement. I also reached out to Alex Rodriguez, our project manager, who had worked closely with me for 4 years and who had witnessed Tyler's minimal contributions and his pattern of taking credit for work others had done. I need to know if you'd be willing to testify about what you've observed, I told Alex during a private meeting. About Tyler's actual role in the company versus what he claims, about the work I've done, about the financial decisions he's made without consulting me. Alex didn't hesitate. Absolutely, he said. Tyler has been taking credit for your work for years and everyone on the team knows it. He barely shows up, he doesn't understand the actual construction work, and he treats the company like his personal expense account. If you're fighting to get the company back, I'll help however I can. Alex's willingness to support me was reassuring, but I knew we needed more than just testimony. We needed hard financial evidence of Tyler's fraud. That's when Rachel suggested bringing in a forensic accountant to analyze the company's financial records and identify all the unauthorized transactions and self-dealing that Tyler had engaged in. We hired a forensic accountant named Martin Chen, who specialized in examining business finances to uncover fraud and embezzlement. I gave Martin access to all the financial records I had been able to copy, and he spent several weeks analyzing 7 years of transactions. What Martin discovered was far worse than I had realized. Tyler hadn't just taken a few unauthorized bonuses. He had been systematically stealing from the company for years through a sophisticated scheme involving fake invoices, inflated expenses, and unauthorized transfers to personal accounts. Tyler has taken approximately $420,000 from the company over the past 5 years through various fraudulent means, Martin explained during a meeting where he presented his findings. Some of it was relatively obvious, like the unauthorized bonuses he gave himself. But much of it was hidden through fake vendor invoices and inflated expense reports. Martin showed me examples. Tyler had created fake invoices from shell companies he controlled, billing the company for non-existent marketing services and business development expenses. He had submitted expense reports for supposed business dinners and travel that never actually happened. He had purchased expensive items like a boat and high-end electronics through the company, claiming they were business assets when they were purely for personal use. This is straight-up embezzlement, Martin said, and it's well documented. Tyler was sloppy in hiding his tracks, probably because he never thought anyone would scrutinize the finances this closely. We have clear evidence of fraud that we can present in court. Armed with Martin's forensic accounting report and all the other evidence I had gathered, Rachel filed a lawsuit against Tyler and Miller Hayes Construction. The complaint alleged partnership fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, embezzlement, and sought to restore my 50% ownership, recover damages for the money Tyler had stolen, and potentially dissolve the partnership so I could take my share of the business value. Tyler's response came through his attorney, a man named Douglas Warren, who had a reputation for aggressive defense of white-collar fraud cases. The response denied all allegations and counterclaimed that I had been mismanaging the company's finances, that I had been compensated fairly for my work, and that the ownership restructuring was legitimate based on the operating agreement. Tyler is going to fight this hard, Rachel warned me. He's hired an expensive attorney, and he's going to try to make you look like a disgruntled employee rather than a defrauded partner. We need to be prepared for a long battle. But we had something Tyler didn't expect: overwhelming evidence. Over the next several months, we went through the discovery process where both sides exchanged documents and information. Tyler's attorney tried to argue that the forensic accounting report was biased and unreliable, but Martin's analysis was thorough and well documented. They tried to claim that Tyler's bonuses and expenses were legitimate business costs, but we had evidence showing the fake invoices and fraudulent expense reports. Perhaps most damaging for Tyler's case was what we discovered during depositions. When Tyler was deposed and questioned under oath about specific transactions, he couldn't provide legitimate explanations for many of them. He claimed he didn't remember details about expenses that had occurred just months earlier. He contradicted himself about his role in various projects. And when confronted with evidence of fake invoices from his shell companies, he had no credible explanation. Tyler is a terrible witness, Rachel told me after his deposition. He's evasive, he contradicts himself, and he looks dishonest. The judge is going to see right through him. We also deposed the business attorney and accountant who Tyler had been meeting with privately. Both of them testified that Tyler had told them he had my consent for the ownership restructuring and that we had mutually agreed to the change. When we showed them evidence that I had never been informed about or consented to the restructuring, they both looked uncomfortable and admitted that they had only relied on Tyler's representations. Those depositions are helpful for us, Rachel explained. They show that Tyler lied to professionals to facilitate the fraud. The attorney and accountant thought they were processing a legitimate ownership change because Tyler misrepresented the facts to them. As we prepared for trial, I also had to deal with the practical reality that Tyler controlled the company and I had no income. I had some savings that would last a few months, but I needed to figure out how to support myself while the lawsuit proceeded. I started taking on consulting work, helping other construction companies with project management and estimating. It wasn't the same as running my own business, but it brought in enough money to pay my bills and showed that I had skills and value beyond Miller Hayes construction. I also started having conversations with some of our key clients, carefully letting them know that there was a dispute about company ownership and that I might not be involved with Miller Hayes in the future. Several clients expressed concern, making it clear that they had been working with the company specifically because of my project management skills, and that they weren't confident in Tyler's ability to deliver quality work without me. "If you start your own company, let me know," one of our longtime clients told me. "I'd rather work with you directly than deal with Tyler." Those conversations gave me confidence that even if the lawsuit didn't go my way, I had options. I could start a new construction company and probably bring many of our existing clients with me. But I was determined to get back what was rightfully mine. Tyler had stolen my company, and I was going to make him face consequences for that theft. The trial was scheduled for 8 months after I filed the lawsuit. As the date approached, Rachel and I prepared extensively. We organized all our evidence into a clear narrative showing Tyler's systematic fraud, the fake invoices, the unauthorized bonuses, the inflated expenses, and finally the fraudulent ownership restructuring. We prepared Alex to testify about Tyler's minimal contributions to the business and his pattern of taking credit for my work. We prepared Martin to explain his forensic accounting findings, and we prepared me to testify about the history of the partnership, Tyler's breaches of trust, and the impact his fraud had on me. "The key is to be factual and unemotional," Rachel advised. "Let the evidence speak for itself. Tyler is going to try to paint you as bitter and vindictive, so we need to show that you're simply seeking justice for legitimate fraud." The trial began on a Monday morning in a Portland courtroom. Judge Patricia Morrison presided, a woman with a reputation for being thorough and fair in complex business disputes. Tyler's attorney, Douglas Warren, presented their case first. He argued that the partnership had been dysfunctional, that I had been difficult to work with, and that Tyler had restructured the ownership legitimately based on the operating agreement we had both signed. He claimed that the bonuses and expenses we were calling fraudulent were actually legitimate business costs that Tyler had appropriately approved as the person responsible for strategic and financial decisions. But when Douglas tried to present Tyler's testimony to support these claims, it became clear that Tyler's story didn't hold up under scrutiny. Rachel cross-examined Tyler extensively, walking him through each fraudulent transaction and watching him struggle to provide credible explanations. "Mr. Hayes, can you explain why your company, Tyler Hayes Consulting, billed Miller Hayes Construction $45,000 for marketing services when there's no evidence that any marketing services were actually provided?" Rachel asked, showing invoices from one of Tyler's shell companies. Those were legitimate marketing and business development services, Tyler replied, but he couldn't provide any details about what those services actually were. Can you show us any deliverables from these supposed services? Any marketing materials? Any campaigns? Any evidence that this work was actually performed? It was strategic consulting work, Tyler said vaguely. Not everything produces tangible deliverables. So you paid yourself $45,000 for consulting services that produced no deliverables, no documentation, and no evidence that they actually occurred? Rachel pressed. Tyler's inability to answer these questions effectively made him look either incompetent or dishonest. His testimony about the ownership restructuring was similarly weak, as he couldn't provide any documentation showing that I had consented to the change or that the operating agreement actually gave him authority to make such a change unilaterally. When it was our turn to present evidence, Rachel methodically walked the judge through the forensic accounting report, showing each category of fraud. The fake invoices totaling $150,000, the unauthorized bonuses totaling $90,000, the fraudulent expense reports totaling $80,000, and the personal purchases charged to the company totaling $100,000. Your Honor, this is not a partnership dispute about different business philosophies, Rachel argued. This is systematic embezzlement and fraud. Mr. Hayes has stolen over $420,000 from the partnership over 5 years, and when my client began questioning his financial practices, Mr. Hayes responded by fraudulently restructuring the ownership to cut my client out entirely. This is criminal behavior, and it demands both restoration of the partnership and significant damages. Alex testified about Tyler's minimal contributions to the business, describing how I was the one actually managing projects, dealing with clients during construction, and ensuring work was completed properly while Tyler occasionally attended networking events and took credit for success he hadn't earned. Tyler would show up for the project kickoff meeting and the final walkthrough, Alex explained. But everything in between, all the actual work of managing the construction, dealing with problems, coordinating subcontractors, that was Jason. Tyler's role was mostly being visible at the beginning and end, so clients associated him with the project's success. Martin Chen, the forensic accountant, explained his methodology and findings in detail, showing the judge exactly how Tyler had hidden his theft through fake invoices and inflated expenses. His testimony was technical but damning, making it clear that Tyler had engaged in sophisticated financial fraud. When I testified, I focused on the history of the partnership, my contributions to building the business, and the impact of Tyler's betrayal. I described the long hours I had worked, the projects I had managed, the systems I had built, all while Tyler took credit and stole money. I trusted Tyler completely, I told the judge. We were friends from college. When he suggested starting a business together, I believed we were building something as equal partners. I never imagined that he was planning to steal everything I had worked for. Rachel also presented evidence that Tyler had lied to the attorney and accountant who had processed the ownership restructuring, showing that professionals had been misled into facilitating his fraud. After 3 days of testimony and evidence, both attorneys presented their closing arguments. Douglas Warren argued that this was a business disagreement being blown out of proportion, that Tyler had made legitimate business decisions that I disagreed with, and that the court should not interfere with the ownership structure Tyler had established. Rachel's closing argument was more powerful. Your Honor, the evidence in this case is overwhelming and undisputed. Mr. Hayes systematically embezzled over $420,000 from the partnership through fake invoices, fraudulent expenses, and unauthorized bonuses. When his partner began questioning these practices, Mr. Hayes responded by fraudulently restructuring the company ownership to cut out the partner who had built the business and who was questioning his theft. This is not a business disagreement. This is fraud and embezzlement, and it demands justice. Judge Morrison took a week to review all the evidence and issue her ruling. When we returned to court for the decision, I felt cautiously optimistic but also nervous about whether we had done enough to prove Tyler's fraud. Judge Morrison began by summarizing the evidence and the key issues in the case. Then she delivered her findings. The court finds that Mr. Hayes breached his fiduciary duty to the partnership and to Mr. Miller through systematic self-dealing and misappropriation of partnership funds, Judge Morrison stated. The evidence clearly shows that Mr. Hayes created fake invoices, submitted fraudulent expense reports, and took unauthorized bonuses, all of which constitute embezzlement from the partnership. I felt relief washing over me as the judge continued. Furthermore, the court finds that Mr. Hayes' restructuring of the company ownership was fraudulent and void. The operating agreement did not give Mr. Hayes unilateral authority to change ownership structure, and Mr. Miller never consented to this change. The restructuring was an attempt to steal Mr. Miller's ownership interest in response to Mr. Miller questioning Mr. Hayes' financial misconduct. Judge Morrison looked directly at Tyler. The court is frankly disturbed by the evidence of systematic fraud presented in this case. Mr. Hayes held a position of trust as Mr. Miller's partner and abused that trust to steal from the partnership for his personal benefit. This behavior is reprehensible and demands significant consequences. The judge then outlined her orders. The fraudulent ownership restructuring was voided, and my 50% ownership interest was restored. Tyler was ordered to repay the partnership the $420,000 he had embezzled, plus interest. And Tyler was ordered to pay me an additional $375,000 in damages for the harm his fraud had caused. Finally, Judge Morrison added, given the irreparable breakdown of trust between the partners, the court orders the dissolution of Miller Hayes Construction, LLC. The business will be liquidated, with all assets and client relationships divided equally between Mr. Miller and Mr. Hayes. Or alternatively, one partner may buy out the other's interest at fair market value. I looked over at Tyler, whose face had gone pale. He had lost everything, his sole ownership claim, his stolen money, and now faced having to pay significant damages. After the ruling, Rachel and I met in her office to discuss next steps. You won completely, she said with satisfaction. Not only is your ownership restored, but Tyler has to pay back everything he stole, plus significant damages. And the dissolution order gives you options about how to proceed. What are my options? I asked. You and Tyler will need to negotiate either a buyout or liquidation of the business, Rachel explained. Given that Tyler owes you and the partnership a total of nearly $800,000, he's not in a position to buy you out. So realistically, your options are to liquidate and take half of everything, or to buy out Tyler's interest yourself. How much would it cost to buy him out? We'd need to have the business valued, but given the current revenue and client base, probably somewhere between $600,000 and $800,000 for his 50% interest. However, Tyler owes you $795,000 from the judgment. So essentially, you could agree to forgive most of his debt in exchange for his ownership interest. You'd end up with the whole company, and he'd end up with nothing, which seems like appropriate justice given what he did. I thought about this option carefully. Did I want to continue running a business that was so associated with Tyler's fraud and betrayal? Or would it be better to liquidate, take my half, and start fresh with something new? After discussing it with Rachel and thinking about it for several days, I made my decision. I would buy out Tyler's interest, rebrand the company under my own name, and build it into something better than it had been. The negotiations with Tyler were handled through attorneys. Tyler, facing the reality that he owed me nearly $800,000 and had no way to pay it, agreed to transfer his ownership interest to me in exchange for my agreement to forgive all but $50,000 of the debt. He's getting off easy, Rachel noted, but you're getting what you wanted, which is full ownership of the business. The ownership transfer was finalized, and I became the sole owner of what had been Miller Hayes Construction. I immediately rebranded it as Miller Construction Renovation, removing Tyler's name entirely and establishing it as my company built on my reputation and my work. I also made sure that everyone in the industry knew what had happened. I didn't badmouth Tyler publicly, but I made sure clients and subcontractors understood that Tyler was no longer involved with the company, that he had engaged in financial misconduct that led to the partnership dissolution, and that I was now running the business with a commitment to integrity and transparency. The response from clients was overwhelmingly positive, Several told me they were relieved that Tyler was gone and that they had only been working with Miller Hayes because of me. Many of our existing clients renewed their contracts with the rebranded company, and we started getting new business from referrals based on my reputation for quality work and ethical business practices. About 6 months after the court case concluded, I was running a company that was more successful than Miller Hayes had ever been. Annual revenue was on track to exceed $3 million, and I had hired additional project managers and office staff to handle the growth. The company was profitable, clients were happy, and I was building something I could be genuinely proud of. I also heard through industry contacts that Tyler was struggling. No one wanted to work with him after word spread about the fraud case. He couldn't get bonding or insurance for construction projects because of the judgment against him, and he was facing potential criminal charges because the judge had referred the case to the district attorney for investigation of embezzlement. Tyler is basically blacklisted in the Portland construction industry, one subcontractor told me. Everyone knows what he did, and no one wants to work with someone who steals from his own partner. I felt no satisfaction in Tyler's downfall, but I also felt no guilt about it. He had made his choices, had stolen from me, and was now facing the consequences. 1 year after the court case, I was invited to speak at a small business association meeting about partnership disputes and protecting yourself in business relationships. I told my story, explained the warning signs I had missed, and shared the lessons I had learned about trust, documentation, and the importance of protecting yourself even in relationships with people you consider friends. The hardest lesson I learned is that trust should be earned continuously, not assumed based on friendship, I told the audience. Tyler and I were friends from college, and I assumed that meant he would be honest and fair in our business relationship. But friendship doesn't guarantee integrity, and I should have been paying more attention to his actions rather than trusting him based on our history. I also emphasized the importance of documentation and legal structures that protect all partners. Document everything, I advised. Keep detailed financial records, make sure all major decisions are documented in writing, and have clear legal agreements that protect everyone's interests. If I had been more careful about documenting Tyler's unauthorized bonuses and his pattern of self-dealing earlier, I might have been able to address the problems before he tried to steal the entire company. The presentation resonated with many people in the audience, and several approached me afterward to discuss their own experiences with partnership problems or to ask for advice about protecting themselves in business relationships. 2 years after the court case, Miller Construction Renovation was thriving. We had become one of the most respected construction firms in Portland, known for quality work, ethical business practices, and excellent project management. Annual revenue had grown to $4.5 million, and we had a team of 15 employees. I had also gotten married to a woman named Sarah, whom I had met through a mutual friend about 6 months after the court case concluded. Sarah was a civil engineer who understood the construction industry and who had supported me through the final stages of rebuilding the business. "I'm proud of what you've built," Sarah told me as we celebrated the company's second anniversary under the new name. "You took something that was stolen from you and turned it into something even better. That takes strength and integrity." "I learned a lot from what Tyler did," I replied. "Painful lessons, but important ones. About trust, about protecting yourself, about not assuming that friendship means someone will treat you fairly in business." 3 years after Tyler stole my company, I had not only recovered but had built something better than what had been taken. The business was successful, I had a supportive partner, and I had learned valuable lessons about business relationships and self-protection. I heard occasionally about Tyler through industry contacts. He had left Portland and was apparently working in real estate sales in another state, using a different name to avoid the reputation he had built in the construction industry. The criminal case against him had been resolved with a plea deal that included probation and restitution, though I never saw most of the money he owed me. But I didn't need the money. I had built a successful business that generated far more revenue than I could have recovered from Tyler's fraud. What mattered was that justice had been served, that Tyler had faced consequences for his theft, and that I had proven I could succeed without him. The experience with Tyler had changed me. I was more careful about who I trusted, more diligent about documentation, and more aware of the warning signs of self-dealing and dishonesty. But I hadn't become cynical or closed off. I had learned to protect myself while still building genuine relationships based on demonstrated integrity rather than assumed trustworthiness. 4 years after the court case, I was approached by a national construction company interested in acquiring Miller Construction Renovation. They were impressed by our reputation, our growth, and our client relationships, and they made an offer to purchase the business for $7.2 million. I thought carefully about whether to sell. The business I had built meant a lot to me, and selling it felt like giving up something important. But I also recognized that the offer represented an opportunity to realize the value of everything I had built and to potentially start new ventures. After discussing it with Sarah and with my advisors, I decided to accept the offer. I negotiated terms that would keep me involved as a regional manager for 3 years, ensuring continuity for clients and employees, but that would also give me financial security and options for the future. The sale closed 5 years after Tyler had tried to steal my company. Standing in the attorney's office where I signed the final paperwork, I thought about how dramatically my life had changed in those 5 years. Tyler had stolen my business, assuming I would just accept it or walk away defeated. Instead, I had fought back with evidence and persistence, had won in court, had rebuilt the company into something more successful than it had been, and had now sold it for millions of dollars. Meanwhile, Tyler had lost everything: his ownership, his reputation, his career in the construction industry, and his freedom when he served probation for embezzlement. His attempt to steal everything had resulted in him ending up with nothing. That was the real lesson of the entire experience. Theft and betrayal might work in the short term, but ultimately integrity and honest work create more sustainable success. Tyler had chosen to steal rather than earn, and that choice had destroyed him. I had chosen to fight for what was rightfully mine and to rebuild based on genuine value. And that choice had led to success beyond what I could have imagined. If you're watching this and recognizing patterns from your own business relationships, if you have a partner who's taking credit for your work or making financial decisions without your input, if you suspect someone is stealing from your business, I want you to know that you can fight back. Document everything. Work with professionals who specialize in business fraud. Build a case that's so strong it can't be denied. And don't be afraid to challenge people who betray your trust, even if those people are friends or partners. Tyler Hayes tried to steal the construction company I had built through 7 years of hard work. He thought he could get away with it because we were friends, because he had control of the accounts, and because he assumed I wouldn't fight back. He was wrong. The evidence of his fraud was overwhelming. The forensic accounting report, the fake invoices, the unauthorized bonuses, the fraudulent ownership restructuring, all of it combined to expose his systematic theft. The judge restored my ownership, ordered him to pay damages, and essentially destroyed his career in the industry. The company he tried to steal became mine alone. I rebranded it, grew it beyond what it had been, and eventually sold it for over $7 million. Tyler, meanwhile, lost his reputation, his career, and ended up with criminal charges and a ruined life. That's not just my victory. It's a template for anyone dealing with business partner betrayal. You can fight back. You can gather evidence. You can expose fraud even when it's committed by people you trusted. It takes time, it takes courage, and it takes persistence, but justice can be served. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might be dealing with a dishonest business partner or workplace theft. Drop a comment about your own experiences with business betrayal or partners who took credit for your work. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about fighting back against fraud and building success through integrity. Remember, document everything. Trust should be earned through consistent actions, and never assume that friendship means someone will treat you fairly in business. Your work and your contributions have value, and you have the right to protect them and fight back when someone tries to steal them. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone out there who's dealing with a dishonest partner, who's watching someone take credit for their work, or who's discovered that a trusted friend has been stealing from them. You can fight back. You can gather evidence. You can win in court. And you can build something even better than what was stolen. It took time. It took legal battles. and it took the courage to expose someone I had trusted. But justice was served, and I built a success that was entirely mine, based on my actual work rather than on someone else's theft.